Welcome to ParadoxWalk podcast, specializing in supernatural activity, paranormal activity, UFOs, cryptids, anything completely out of the ordinary, unexplainable events. Today's episode, I will focus mostly on people that have had near-death experiences and have claimed to have they see a reorganization wheel, and a few comments about time. What could be happening with time? Is time an actual thing, or is it just a byproduct of space and consciousness kind of running through space like an old-fashioned tape recorder runs through tape, or a needle on a vinyl record just kind of reads the record? But could time and space be more like the vinyl on the album, and the needle on the record is like our consciousness, where kind of jumping around like a needle would on a record, the idea of time, and whereas time doesn't seem to be anything anybody can put their finger on and kind of point to, So that's an interesting thing in the same way, but does that mean it's actually not there? Because, we can't point a finger at a song, but it's there. You can't show me anything inside of an MP3 player that is a song. You can show me sheet music and notes, but that's not a song. That's just the ink on a page. It's not the song. So maybe that's kind of how time is. It's just something that kind of develops when you have consciousness and space. So what these people are seeing, they report seeing a wheel, and a lot of people seem to report the same exact thing. They seem to say that it has like these water paddles, which is an interesting thing to have for something that flip-flops through time, is water. Weird. They call it the NDE wheel, like near-death experience wheel. Ezekiel, the prophet from the Bible, claimed to have seen a wheel inside of another wheel. And that's interesting. I'm not going to comment or put my own something that I don't know much about. So I'm just going to go ahead and read the first account here. As usual, I'm going to cut out all the lead-in stuff and just get straight to the story. So this is, quote, on the 15th of July, 2013 at 7:45 in the morning, I was on my way to work, approaching an intersection and getting ready to take a left-hand turn. It's a notoriously dangerous intersection on any day, and there have been many accidents there. I was running late in a flustered state of mind. So this person goes on to tell more about the traffic signal, but I'm just going to get straight to the story. And I looked to the right and believed I correctly viewed that nothing was approaching from them right, so I started to make a left turn. As I crossed the intersection, I glanced right once more and saw a vehicle heading straight for me, what could only have been in the excess of 90 miles an hour. We saw each other. I saw the vehicle heading straight for me. We saw each other, and I saw the look in the other guy's eyes because we were that close. A collision was absolutely inevitable. There was no way on earth that this could have been avoided. What happens next is extremely difficult to describe, but I'll do my best. And this can be and must be taken to apply to everything that I'm going to attempt to relate from this point onwards. Words, even the most carefully chosen words, capture no more than 1% of this experience at best, and even then poorly. This is quite possibly the most frustrating thing about this given account. Across from the front of the car on the left is in almost the opposite direction to the oncoming vehicle was a field. I suddenly became aware of a very large object, in quotes, approaching slowly on a diagonal across this field. It was coming directly towards my car. Time was not functioning normally while this was happening, if it was functioning at all. I had the space to notice this happening, but I can't explain how I was able to do that. The object, when I first saw it, appeared to be about the size of a 10-floor tower block. I think he means like a 10-floor building? I don't know. It subjectively seemed to be about 200 or 300 yards across the field. These size and distance descriptions are meaningless, as I'll try to explain in a moment. The object resembled a giant water wheel laying on its side and rotating as it approached me and my vehicle. As I got closer, this didn't take time as we understand it. I saw that my first observation about its size was wildly inaccurate. It was more like the size of a small city. As it got closer still, I understood that all scale and distance estimates were meaningless. It was larger than we think of as the world. Aware of its power and significance, my mind interpreted this as being an up-close, giant-scale physical object. Okay, now this is the part that is particularly difficult to explain. As the object drew near me, a kind of some sensation came over my person, and I knew exactly what this thing was. Not only that, but I knew everything that pertained to it. What it was doing, what its business was with me, where and when I had seen it before, why I was seeing it now, and many, many other things that I cannot now recall. I had seen the object before I was born, and I will see it again when I die. We all knew it before we were born. We will all see it when we die. But this information is eclipsed from us while we are alive. And that is why I was seeing it now in the experience, because I was in the process of dying in a fatal car crash. Here is what I can remember, as best words can tell. This wheel wasn't something that moved across me towards the world or through reality somehow. This was an illusion that my senses were constructing for me. This wheel was reality itself. It represented every conceivable reality for a life or a world that could ever be envisioned or imagined. As it approached, I became aware that what we call our world was contained within it. It was simply one of the numberless slots or paddles in the water wheel. It had always been so. My life, your life, our world, all of us, we were part of this wheel structure, and we had always been part of this structure. It simply now made itself visible to me. There then began the truly terrifying dimension of this experience. Words cannot even begin to describe the level of fear I experienced. The water wheel sort of rolled across me, and then across the place where my car was in the road. As it did so, I began to be hit by each of the paddles in the wheel. Remember that all of this was just a way of talking. It does not and cannot remotely describe the real situation as it actually was, but some sense of it can be had by imagining that in the space of each paddle, he puts in quotes, there was this kind of spinning film of water, like a waterfall on its side. Imagine a film of water being thrown outward from the wheel in each slot, as if by centrifugal force. Imagine being slapped or splashed by each of these films as you collide with it and pass through it, and then on to the next one. This is what was happening, except these weren't just films of water. They were, for want of a better term, possible realities, or what we might think of as universes or worlds. Again, our world, the entire universe as we normally think about it, was simply one among an infinite number of these. How did I know that there was an infinite number? I just did. A kind of knowing came with the event, and there was no doubting this knowing. It was so, and I knew it was so. And because I had the knowledge and understood what was happening in ways I can no longer communicate, I was afraid. I understood that I was about to be subject to the process that humans approximated with the term reincarnation. This is why the wheel had come. I represented a kind of discrepancy that had to be fixed. The event, or perhaps the imminent event on the highway, had caused me to slip out or out of or fall between the paddles on the wheel. The structure had some kind of cosmic purpose of sorting these things into their correct natural place. I was afraid and resisted being sorted, so the wheel stepped up its aggressive attempts to sort me correctly. With this came another understanding that frightened me even more. I knew that unless I soon selected one of these realities to slide back into, that the wheel would coerce the situation by deciding for me. One way or another, I would be sorted, whether I liked it or not. If I didn't choose for myself, I would simply be fitted into another place at the nearest position on the wheel. To the point where I failed to make the decision, if that makes sense. I was aware of having a limited ability to choose, but not too much. Even that limited ability wasn't much use because each reality slammed against me and through me before I could even make much sense of what it contained. Even I did not remain the same from one slot in the wheel to the next. It was as if each film broke over me. I was destroyed and made again from the ground up, as if a completely new self. There was no continuous me that traveled unaltered through that wheel and can somehow report back on this experience. This is just one of the many things that is so very hard to explain. The very idea of a continuous self was contradicted by this experience. I have forgotten, or perhaps it was deliberately suppressed, the vast majority of what I saw in the various universes or paddles of the wheel. At the beginning, they seem very similar to this world we inhabit, or believe ourselves to inhabit. For example, I have a floating memory of seeing various different scenarios of how the accident played out. I suspect that these are all nearby paddles on the wheel, and one of them I remember seeing what looked like my vehicle thrown right off the road and so badly damaged that it looked like it had been folded in the center by like a pocket knife. I seem to recall many other scenarios like this that I can no longer remember. To clarify, what I mean is that it seemed to file or flip through numerous conceivable, and then he puts in like parentheses, quantum question mark possibilities for the outcome of the accident. I can remember doing this but I cannot remember what any of these particular worlds contained. I have no explanation for why I failed to experience any of the phenomena usually reported with the imminent death situations like the tunnel, the light, and so on. I suspect that imminent death experiences are symbolic scenarios that flash up just as someone is entering or exiting the wheel, but before the situation has developed very far. At no stage did I see anything, whatever, that resembled what we humans would think of as an afterlife or spirit world or life after death realm. It's as if we're either on the outer surface of the wheel itself, in one of its realized worlds, or else we are dead, and we are the wheel itself. The wheel is a space where all uncreated possibility exists, but nothing completed or actual. And bear in mind that nothing was concealed from me. I was the all and knew the all. I certainly don't retain it or pretend to, but I knew it then. I began to grow extremely panicked. Each time I thought I was just beginning to get a handle on things, I would be slapped over violently and ruthlessly into a new slot in the wheel, and a whole new me would crystallize, along with all the memories and assumptions that went along with that world. I remembered none of who I was just a moment ago in another paddle on the wheel. I had no memory whatsoever of where I had come from or the highway situation in my world. I had zero memory of that world. I knew I had come from somewhere, but had no recollection of where that was, or even who I was. It was about the most bizarre thing you could imagine. Somehow, though, and I can only assume that it happened without any conscious action on my part, the possibilities appearing in the wheel began to narrow down and become somewhat more familiar again. Scenarios associated with the accident began to appear once more. I say once more, but I have no real way of knowing whether this was a separate incidence of this to what I had described above, or whether it's really the same incidents, because time was functioning so unusually during the whole episode. Again, I saw or seemed to see various or possible world outcomes where I died in the crash. I seemed to understand intuitively that if I went into any of these, I would be there for only a few moments or minutes at